Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is roommates. Maybe some of you have had a roommate or roommates before in your life. But if you've lived for a little while, you probably have had a roommate. Roommates can always be an interesting story because of the scenarios that you may or may not go through with a roommate. I came to this idea. I was listening to the homie Baylor's podcast. Shout out to BTG, Baylor the Great. The podcast is called BTG for President. So I'm listening to this podcast and he talks about an incident that happened. And what was interesting about the incident that happened is it happened with a young lady. And he explained how he got himself out of a jam. Well, the sidebar in the story that he told was that his roommate, and he was college age at this point, his roommate was in jail. And his roommate was in jail because he had made what the police had deemed a terroristic threat, which could definitely land you in jail. Especially post 9/11. Then this was definitely post 9/11. So nonetheless, his roommate is in jail and he tells the story about how he got out of this jam or what happened. But hearing him talk about his roommate got me to thinking about, the roommates that I've had over my lifetime. And I wanted to get on here and just tell you a little bit about the roommates that I've had and maybe share a story or two. My first roommate really should come as no surprise, but my first roommate, if you know me, is my brother Damon. Now, Damon is almost 3 years younger than me. We're 3 years apart as far as school is concerned. So when we were in high school, just to give you an idea, I was a senior and he was a freshman. But that was my first roommate. And Damon and I were roommates probably from the time he was born until, I don't know, probably until we moved. Okay, let me go back. When he was born, we lived in these apartments. So we had an apartment and it was a 2-bedroom apartment. My parents had a room and then he and I shared a room. So we were roommates then. And I mean, you don't really think about it because it's like, okay, hey, it's your brother, it's your little brother. So we were roommates and he was he was an excellent roommate. We didn't have any issues or anything like that. We were very close, super, super tight. We talk every day. That's my guy. And I'm the big brother. And, although he's 3 years younger than me, I still refer to him as my little brother, but he's not my little brother. He's my younger brother. But that's my guy and I love him. And so he was a great roommate. And I think we were probably roommates from that time until my parents bought a house. I think I was in like the 4th grade and he was in the 1st grade. Yeah, I think that's when we weren't roommates anymore because we had our own room. But he was a great roommate. He was a great roommate. Now, my parents then got divorced when I was 13, almost 14. And we moved in to our family house and my aunt lived there, my aunt and my cousins. And so what was interesting was we still had separate rooms. So I didn't have a roommate. So I had my own room then. And it was cool because my room was the hangout spot. It's the hangout spot for me. I'll be honest, particularly when I was in high school, if I did not have to, unless I had to eat, if I had my, ideas, then I would have stayed in my room the whole time. My room was my sanctuary. And so didn't have a roommate again until it was time to go to college. Now, as many of you know, or maybe you don't know, I attended the illustrious South Carolina State University, where I am a proud alum. So I had to get used to the idea of having a roommate because, again, I hadn't had a roommate for a while, and this is something different because now I'm coming onto a college campus and I only know a couple of people. My cousin Eric went to school with me, so I knew him. His older brother Mike was already there. I had a couple of friends from high school who attended South Carolina State as well, but for the most part, didn't know anybody. Definitely didn't know my roommate. So my freshman year, the first semester of my freshman year, my roommate is one of my teammates. As many of you know, or maybe you don't know, I played football at South Carolina State University the entire time that I was there, right? So my roommate, his name is Bush. Well, that's not his first name. I mean, it's not his first name, but it's his last name. That's what we call him. His name is Bush. Bush was interesting to say the least. A really good guy. A really, really good guy. But, and I'm sure he doesn't mind me telling the story, Bush at the time probably was the nastiest roommate you could ever have, right? And what I mean by that is on my side of the room, and keep in mind, I'm trying to paint this picture here. It's a college campus. I'm a freshman. He's a sophomore. It's not that much space, right? So I got my side of the room. He's got his side of the room. So on my side, there's a bed, there's a desk, drawer, closet, whole nine. Same on his side. However, on his side, he decided not to put a fitted sheet on his bed. So on his bed, he would sleep on the mattress and he pulled like a sheet and a blanket over him. Why? I don't know. At the foot of his bed was his entire wardrobe of clean clothes. Fortunately, he did not have the dirty clothes at the foot of his bed, but everything else, all of his clean clothes were sitting on his bed or on the floor by his bed. All of his clothes. I'm talking shirts, jeans, sweaters, sweatshirts, whatever. It was just in one big pile. And we had a drawer where you could put your clothes in, but he chose not to use the drawer. He wasn't messy as far as food was concerned. In fact, I really don't have a lot of memories of him actually eating food in the room. But the fact that he did not use a fitted sheet, the fact that he had all of his clothes on his bed on the floor was just downright trifling. But we got along cool as roommates. But what was interesting was I remember people would walk into our room and it's particularly my friends, because his friends, I guess, kind of knew. But my friends would walk into the room and they'd walk in the room and they, say what's up to me. And then they look on his side of the room and they'd be like, ugh, like what the hell is going on over there? And yeah, so it was different. But Bush and I only roomed together for one semester, my first semester of my freshman year. So it was only, like I said, one semester. So now comes the second semester. Bush moves out. I don't know. I can't remember. I think he roomed with one of our other teammates. And what was interesting was where we lived at in Bethea Hall. Shout out to Bethea Hall, which is no longer here. And if you follow the podcast, you know that I did an episode on Bethea Hall. He goes, we live in the football wing, but not necessarily, you didn't have to necessarily be a football player to be on that wing, but most of the football players were on that wing of Bethea Hall, right? I go home for Christmas. I come back. To be honest, I didn't even know that Bush was leaving as far as a roommate was concerned. I just figured he'd be back. But he was. Well, he came back, but obviously he was in another room. So he told me when we got back that he was moving with somebody else. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'm thinking, okay, I got the room to myself, but I know better. I know that they're going to bring in another roommate, whatever. And so I go to the caf to grab something to eat and I come back and I'm sitting in the room and for whatever reason, I was back there at school a day earlier. So a day goes by and the next day, my new roommate, he's coming to the room. I'm assuming that he's coming. Yeah, nobody told me that he was coming, but I'm assuming that he's coming. So I hear a turn at the door. I hear the key turning or whatever. And I'm like, okay, let me sit up, because I was sitting across the bed. And I was like, let me sit up and greet my new roommate. The door flies open. And I look, and it's a familiar face. It's my boy, Irv. And I look at Irv, and I'm like, Irv, what are you doing here? And he was like, Kyle, what are you doing here? I was like, I've been here. What are you doing here? And I got up, gave him dap, gave him a big hug. Funny story. And I have known each other since we were little kids. And how I know Irv is because right across the street from my home is the Hayward family. And Hayward's always been great people. Their sons, Joey and Ryan, are close friends. And so every summer, their cousin from North Carolina would come down and he would hang out with them and we'd all play together. We'd all play football and everything. And that was their cousin Irv. I had no idea that Irv was coming. So again, this is somebody from my childhood who is a homie. And so now I got a new roommate and it's Irv. And I knew that Irv was at Hampton, but I didn't know that he was transferring to South Carolina State. So we catch up. Irv's parents come in and they're like, hey, that's Kyle from across the street in Florence, blah, 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 blah. And so, we hug and stuff. And what was interesting was I had an aunt was a professor at South Carolina State University. She was a science professor, Aunt Grace. And I knew her too. I never made the connection, but, so Irv has, his aunt there. He's got me there. And listen, Irv as a roommate was fun. Man, we had a good time. We always, because again, we have a built-in friendship. Like, this is my boy. I just didn't know he was coming. And so once we get over the shock of him being there, we're hanging out. We're, going around campus, going to parties and stuff, meeting people, girls, the whole nine. And so, but what was interesting about Irv, and I got to tell this story. He laughs when I tell this story. Irv was bad when it came to time. And what I mean by that is I've never seen anyone get up at 8:00 for an 11:00 class and still be late for class. I can't explain it. This dude would get up in the morning, he'd go get something to eat, he'd come back, he'd iron his clothes. And I mean, like, when I say iron his, I've never seen somebody pay that much attention to ironing their clothes repeatedly. But full disclosure, he's a military kid. So military kids, clean, proper, sharp. Me, I'm just throwing on a hoodie, some Jordans, and I'm going to class. I'm not, I don't have to get that fresh to go to class. But again, I'm a freshman. But he would take his time, and then I would look up and I go to class and I come back and he's socializing, he's talking to people, whatever the case may be. And then his class is at like 11:00. And his class is at Turner Hall, which is Turner Hall from Bethea Hall is literally across the street. And this guy would be running out of the door at 10:55, trying to get across the street to get to class. And I'm like, dude, you got up at 8:00. Why are you late going to class? But that's my man, 30 grand, love him to life. That's my boy. We had a great time. We talked about music all the time. We shared music. Like I said, we kicked it, we partied. Another funny story, I remember what was interesting was I mentioned Aunt Grace. His Aunt Grace taught a class at South Carolina State University. She was a professor, science professor. And Irv actually took her class. And Irv had a project due, right? And he's in and out of the room, so I don't see this project. And one day Aunt Grace calls the room. So I answer the phone. She was like, hey, this is Professor Grace. I was like, hey, Aunt Grace, how you doing? So forth and so on. She was like, I was calling to find Irvin. I was like, he's not here. She was like, well, he's got a project that's due. Have you seen the project? And y'all, I hadn't seen no parts of the project. So when Irv finally turns in the project, man, he's walking out of the room. Stuff on the project's falling off the paper, off the poster board. It was just a mess. But he had a good time at South Carolina State. He was only there that semester. He transferred. Where did Irv? I don't know. The running joke is that Irv went to 8 schools, and South Carolina State used to be one of them. Now, again, that's my boy. That's my man, 50 grand. But he finally did graduate. He unfortunately didn't graduate from South Carolina State, but he did graduate. So shout out to Irv. And Irv lives here in Metro Atlanta, and we talk every day or text every day. And good dude, love him to life. So then I go into the first semester of my sophomore year, and now I'm no longer for whatever reason I'm no longer on the football wing of the of Bethea Hall. I get moved to the other side, the dark side of Bethea Hall, right? And so I'm over here with the quote unquote regular students, as we used to call. I don't know why we used to call them as football players. We would call everybody else quote unquote regular students, as if we weren't regular students who just happen to play football. But so I'm on the other side, and I'm in the room. I get there in that fall because we had football camp. I get there before my roommate does, so I'm there at least 2 or 3 weeks before my roommate gets there. So my roommate gets there. I meet him. His name is Brian. He's from Greenville, South Carolina. Me and Brian were cool. And it's funny because like maybe the second day that me and Brian were roommates, we were talking, and he was telling me about some people that he knew. And then he said something to the effect of, he said, yeah, my boy Travis will be here soon. He's supposed to be checking in later and he's going to come by. And I was like, okay. So again, I'm not thinking anything. And so I never forget, we had our door open, and I had my back turned, and when I turned and I heard him say, hey, what's up, Travis? He was like that. And so I turned around to see who this Travis guy is. Man, listen, why is it that Travis is my homeboy that we literally grew up on the same street together? Like, my house was at the end, in the middle part of our street. Travis's house was at the beginning of our street back in Florence in South Carolina. And I known Travis since we were like 8 or 9. Like we go that far back. What was interesting was Travis and I went to middle school together. We went to high school together for our freshman year. And then Travis and his parents moved to Greenville. They moved from Florence, South Carolina to Greenville, South Carolina. And so I didn't see or hear from him. I think I may have talked to him once or twice on the phone or something like that, but I hadn't seen him, and I had no idea that he was coming to South Carolina State. So turns out that Brian and Travis knew each other from, playing ball and stuff in Greenville, because they both were basketball players. And so now I'm like, yo, this is my boy. Like, again, we grew up together. We used to hang in middle school all the time. We used to play basketball at each other's house. I used to go in his house. His mom would feed him, vice versa. His little brother Jason was cool. So this is, again, a family reunion. And so now it's the Three Musketeers. To be honest, I really didn't, that particular year, I don't think I spent that much time with my teammates off the field. But it was always like me, Travis, and Brian. And one day, funny story, one day I was supposed to go to a party at Duke's gym. Well, I don't know what happened. I was tired or something like that, so I didn't go to the party. So I don't go to the party. Travis and Brian go to the party, and they go, and they're gone for a couple of hours, and they come back. And so what happened was, at Duke's gym, there's a bunch of trees that surround Duke's gym. And so they went to the party at Duke's gym. They come back, and I saw Travis before I saw Brian. We used to call him B. And so I said, so Travis comes in the room, and he's just laughing. And I was like, man, what's wrong with you? And Travis has this very distinct laugh, and he's laughing uncontrollably. I was like, man, where's B? And he was like, and he was laughing so hard he couldn't get it out. And I was like, man, I said, what is wrong with you? He was like, man, oh my gosh. He's like, man, a bird shit on B. B was standing up under a tree. It was talking to some girls, I guess. And a bird took a dump, and it landed on B's t-shirt. And he had on a white t-shirt. Man, oh my. And then like 5 minutes later, he walks in the room. I am on the floor. Me and Travis on the floor, dying laughing. And that's one of my favorite memories of those dudes. But like I said, me and B, we had a great relationship. B didn't stay in school. I think he stayed like another semester, and then he transferred. I can't remember where he transferred, but he's doing well. If I'm not mistaken, he still lives in Greenville. Okay, so then I moved back to the football wing for my third year at school, and I'm paired up with one of my teammates named Kurt. Now, I knew Kurt a little because Kurt and I came in together in 1991, in the fall of 1991, which we had a great recruiting class in football. Kurt played linebacker. He's from North Carolina, Anson County, North Carolina. And Kurt and I, we were cool roommates. We were real cool roommates. Had real good conversation. I don't really have any funny Kurt stories. What was interesting was, and I'd never seen this done before. I went to class one day, and I came back, and because I think Kurt was a criminal justice major, I was a marketing major, and so my school where I would go to class was School of Business. Shout out to Belcher Hall. I was about to say Bethea. Shout out to Belcher Hall, which I did an episode on not too long ago. So I went to Belcher and I came back and Kurt had his class. But he didn't go to class this particular day. And so I come in the room and I realized that I had a Sega Genesis, right? And everybody would love to come to the room and play John Madden on Sega Genesis. And this was the early days of Madden, right? And I noticed that Madden was on the TV and Kurt was playing. And so I put my books down. I'm sitting down, starting to, I said, what's up? I'm doing my work or whatever. And I look over and Kurt's sitting there, but there's no controller in his hand. That's odd. And I'm like, Kurt, how are you playing this game without any controller? And he's like, oh, I'm not playing. I'm just watching. Up until that point, I had never seen anybody put a game on simulation and just watch the game and not play it. That was like new to me. I was like, who does that? And it wasn't anything wrong with it. I'd never seen it before. So that was something interesting about Kurt. He did like to watch Madden on simulation. So then I leave Bethea Hall. So now I'm on my next roommate, and this is my boy, Kelly Craig. Kelly Craig, and I have to say his full name because we all called him Kelly Craig. Nobody called him Kelly. We all called him Kelly Craig. I don't know why. But I'd known Kelly Craig. We met we had a math class together, and he walked on the football team and he played tight end. Really, really great athlete. He's from Winsboro, South Carolina. And I knew Kelly before we became roommates. And good dude, the ladies loved him, and he loved the ladies. And we got to be real cool roommates. Now, what was interesting was I was no longer in Bethea. Now I'm in Mitchell Hall. Mitchell Hall was, a lot different. The rooms were bigger. They were carpeted. They were kind of fresh, But, the downside to being in Mitchell Hall was there really wasn't a lot of action over there outside of Mitchell Hall. But when we lived in Bethea, everybody had to come. You had to walk past Bethea. Everybody. If you had a class on the far end of campus, you had to walk past Bethea. So girls were always by Mitchell. You didn't really see a lot of foot traffic. I mean, there's some dorms, girls' dorms is next door to Mitchell, but it's not the same. Nonetheless, Kelly and I were really, really good roommates. Really didn't have any problems. Like I said, Kelly, what was interesting was, like I said, he loved the ladies and the ladies loved him. And, at this time we're playing, as far as football is concerned. So I remember a couple of times, there was a battle between the two of us, a silent battle, if you will, to get to the room and get on the phone. Now, keep in mind, this is 94. So we don't have cell phones. So the phone in the room is a hard line to the room. And so I remember one time I was on the phone talking to this girl, and he came in the room. He's like, hey, man, how long are you going to be on the phone? I was like, I don't know, another 20 minutes. He's like, hey, man, can you hurry your call? I need to call my mom. And so I get off the phone. I let him call his mom. And I came back. I left the room, came back. And I'm like, why is he on the phone with his mom talking under the covers? So, I mean, just funny stuff like that. But the one of the many great things I could say about Kelly was Kelly introduced me to my wife, Sharice. I'm not going to get into the story because I'm pretty sure I've told it on this podcast before. But Kelly, he introduced me to Sharice, and I'm forever grateful for that. Unfortunately, a few years ago, right before COVID, I think it was like 2019, Kelly unfortunately had a heart attack and passed away. And it hit me because because we had stayed in contact and we were communicating, sending text messages and sometimes on IG. I knew he was in good shape. So it wasn't like he was in bad health or anything, but, surprisingly he had a heart attack and passed away. And that, hit me like a ton of bricks because here's the thing. I never got a chance to tell Kelly, thank you, because if he had not urged me that night to come be his wingman as he tried to talk to this girl, and I was supposed to occupy the time of her friend, which was Sharice, my wife now, we probably never meet. At least not. And if we ever crossed paths, it would never have been in that type of scenario. So I never got a chance to thank Kelly for that. And I'm not gonna say I didn't have a chance. I just never said thank you. I really should have. But I mean, and I could probably fuss at Kelly for introducing me to him on the days that she got on my nerves, which, can be a lot sometimes. And I'm sure I've gotten on her nerves, but I mean, hey, we're 23 years into this marriage at the time of this recording. So, but yeah, definitely rest in peace to Kelly Craig. Then the next year after that, I am, senior. My roommate is my boy Russ. Russ is my dog. Russ and I came in together as freshmen. Russ and I probably, of all the roommates I've had, I mean, with the exception of my brother, Russ and I are the closest. Like, that's one of my best friends. And so we had a great time as roommates. Living with Russ was cool because, you got a chance to kind of see how he prepared himself. And he was one of the few people that I knew that even at that age in college, again, we're seniors, literally prepared himself each day for the next day. Like before he went to bed, he would prepare his clothes. He would have his books and stuff for the class he was going to. He would do some reading. He was always a step ahead. And he's even like that to this day. He's still a step ahead and he's doing a lot of great things. And that's my boy. That's my boy right there. We talk all the time and definitely happy for him. But it all started, in that room. Well, actually, our friendship actually started the first night that we got to South Carolina State University. We almost got into a fight with some upperclassmen. And the thing that I remember was he was this short dude with like 3 tight gold chains around his neck, and he's from DC. He's from Maryland, the DMV area. And I was like, I don't know who this dude is, but if he's ready to fight these upperclassmen, I'm with him. Let's go. Let's go to war. And so the leadership you could see in Russ early. So yeah, that's my dog. That, again, the closest roommate that I've had as a friend. But we had some great times in that room. Conversations, everything, talking about the future, and it's funny because it's like we would talk about how our lives would be, 10, 15 years down the road. And our lives have, in a roundabout way, kind of gone that way that we had talked about. And then my last roommate, well, here's the thing. I can't really count Sharice as a roommate because I did move off campus and get an apartment, and Sharice and I were roommates. We lived together for 2 years, I think, right before I graduated. No, maybe a year and a half. And then I graduated and I stayed in Orangeburg, South Carolina, where South Carolina State's located. Stayed there for 6 months after I graduated. And then I moved July 24th, 1997. Moved to Atlanta, and it's been it. But when I moved to Atlanta, that's when I had my last roommate, and that was my boy Jay Fresh. Now, if you follow the podcast, I've mentioned Jay Fresh on several episodes. Jay Fresh is one of my best friends in the world, and he's probably, I'm not going to say probably, he's the person that I've known the longest. Like, we've literally been friends since we were 6 years old. And we grew up in the church together. dad's a preacher or was a preacher, and he's typical preacher's kid, bad as hell. But he's part of my crew from back home, right? So I go to South Carolina State. Jay Fresh goes to Claflin, which is right next door, right? Fresh didn't like Claflin too much, so he was only at Claflin for a year. Then he transferred to Coastal Carolina, which is near Myrtle Beach, and he graduates there. So we start talking. I mean, of course we're the best friends, so we stay in touch even after he transferred. But we start talking, and I mentioned, hey, I'm thinking about moving to Atlanta. He was like, me too. And I was like, man, you ain't gonna move to Atlanta. And he's like, yeah, because I was in Orangeburg. He was back home in Florence at the time, and he was ready to get out of his parents' house. And so we started kicking around the idea of moving to Atlanta. I mean, they just had the Olympics in 1996, and it seemed like the place that was popping. I'd been a Freaknik and lost my mind, so so why not Atlanta? But I just knew in the back of my mind he was gonna, back out of the deal. But he said he was gonna do it, so I actually got a job. He didn't have a job, but his parents, co-signed on the lease, and we got a townhouse in Marietta, right outside northern suburb of Atlanta, and we lived together for a year. And listen, Jay Fresh is he's probably well. Let me phrase it like this: I'm probably the only person in our crew from back home that could have lived with Jay Fresh. And it wasn't that he was messy, because he wasn't messy at all. He was a vegan at the time, so he didn't eat any meat. Pause. He didn't eat. He was very selective. I mean, like, he ate a lot of rice. He did not. Did he have a bed? I don't think he didn't have a bed. Like, he slept on the floor for a while. And it wasn't that he couldn't afford a bed. He just didn't want a bed. Which was odd, because, when you have female company come over and spend the night. But hey, I mean, I never asked. So, but yeah, that was cool. It was just someone, a mutual friend of ours, when she got a chance to know us, she said, you guys are outcasts. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, no, you're like the group Outcast. And I was like, explain. And she was like, well, you're like Big Boy. You're the guy who everybody knows. You're kind of street smart. You're over here. You're all over the place. You're very social, so forth and so on. Him, he's the weirdo. And I mean, it was a compliment, but it wasn't far from the truth. But we did a lot as roommates, man. I mean, and again, we're new to the city. Neither of us have any kids or any responsibilities, and we had a pocket full of money. So I mean, like, what else could you do but get into stuff? So I remember, man, we would go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday. All he had to do was say, hey, man, I know about this party. Okay, let's go. It was just like that. I mean, and we would, because we're close friends, we love music. A lot of our conversations would deal with music, sports, girls, of course. But we just hung out. We always hung out together. Always. If like, it was rare for us to go places and you not see the two of us. Like, it was rare. Like, if you came to our crib and you said, well, hey, where's Jay Fresh? Oh, he's somewhere. No, we were always together. Always. So even unless it was like something where, like, I was going to the mall, but even if I was going to the mall, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to Lennox. You want to roll? Like, all right, cool. We go. So we partied a lot. We ate. And now that's where we kind of differ, because again, food and stuff. Like, I'd come home and cook chicken and pork chops and stuff like that, and he would be chastising me. Man, I can't believe you're eating that flesh. I was like, man, you used to eat hamburgers like 5 years ago, man. Shut up. So, but no, we had a very, and it's interesting because you just never know how a friendship can be enhanced or destroyed when you're rooming with somebody, because people, it's like the old saying, you never know somebody until you live with them. And I got to know Jay Fresh a whole lot better with us living together. But he was a great roommate as far as, I mean, he pays his bills. He eventually got a job at Lenox Mall as well. And so we always hung out. We always hung out. So it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a situation where, you know, us being roommates and he didn't pay the rent and now all of a sudden we're not friends anymore or anything like that. Nah, man. He wasn't messy. He cleaned up behind himself. And we always hung out. We always hung out no matter what. So and then he at the time, I knew it was important for him to at least for me, I'm dating Sharice. So I'm like, okay, I want my friends to get to know her and like her. They hit it off and she loves Jay Fresh to death. I mean, she loves him even to this day. I mean, like she's always asking about him and stuff. And they've always had a great relationship and still do. And I knew that would be important because that's an important relationship and an important friendship to me. And, you know, I was slowly becoming aware that this girl is somebody that I want to spend the rest of my life with. And so it was important to me that, you know, she'd get to know my friends and be around my friends. But yeah, I've had some great roommates. In conclusion, I've had some solid guys as roommates. I didn't have the experiences that a lot of kids have in college where, you know, the roommates is a pest or the roommate takes their clothes or they get into a fight with a roommate. Trust me, I've heard all of those stories. And what was even weirder was when we were at South Carolina State University, there were some dorms where you might have 2 roommates or 3 roommates. Nah, man. I couldn't do it. I feel fortunate and blessed that I only had 1 roommate each year. But even when I had roommates, you know, it was everything was good. I almost, how did I forget? I forgot about my boy Sekou. Kelly and I think one semester toward the end of the, it wasn't even a full semester. Kelly moved out into another room, and then Sekou, one of our other teammates, moved in with me. And so me and Sekou were roommates for maybe about 2 months, no more than 3 months. But Sekou was cool too. So I didn't have any of those bad experiences, and I'm thankful for that because, you know, you could have a situation where you're in a room and you don't have any control over who it is that you get to room with. And, you know, unless you have a twin or somebody that you actually want your school to pair you with, you don't know. So it's always a crapshoot with roommates. More often than not, if the roommates are cool, they get to become lifetime friends. And I think that's one of the beauties of that. Like I said, I have good stories. I have great stories. I have funny stories. I don't have any go to jail stories. But I got a shout out to the homie Bela for the mere mention of his roommate. It definitely inspired this episode. And if you have any great roommate stories, let me know. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. You can find the podcast. We have our own YouTube channel, youtube.com, 12 Kyle podcast. Make sure that you subscribe and then hit the notification so you'll get notifications when the episode drops. The great thing about this podcast is that we have both audio and video on YouTube. If you're on social media, hit me up at 12 Kyle, at 12 Kyle podcast, Instagram, Twitter, X. I think I'm forgetting one. Facebook, you name it, we're there. The podcast can be heard anywhere you get podcasts. So we're everywhere. If you feel so inclined and you want to throw us a couple of dollars, we'll take it. $, TWELVEKYLE. That's on the Cash App. And if you look in the description box, you will see a link that says merch. Yes, we do have merch. You can get 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and a little bit of everything. So check that out as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.